I stepped off the transport plane onto American soil with the quiet confidence of a man who believed he had seen it all. My name isn't important. What matters is that I'm a team leader in one of Canada's special operations units, a captain with 15 years in the forces. I've led assaults in dusty villages overseas, cleared compounds under fire, and trained countless operators in the precise, methodical ways that have defined our approach for decades. Urban warfare? I'd lived it, or so I thought. Back home, we prided ourselves on our professionalism. Our training was structured, aligned with NATO standards, clear objectives, detailed rehearsals, and procedures drilled until they became second nature. We moved with discipline, clean entries, precise communications, flawless bounding overwatch. Our gear was always squared away, our tactics textbook perfect. We weren't cowboys, we were surgeons. Individual skills were sharp, marksmanship that could thread a needle at distance, physical fitness that let us ruck for days without complaint, and the team ethos? Unbreakable. We believed our way produced operators who could handle anything with control and composure. That's why, when the invitation came for a joint training course with the Americans, something billed as an exchange on urban operations, I didn't jump at it. The phrasing in the brief raised my eyebrows. Non-traditional methods, breaking the playbook, adapting to chaos. It sounded like buzzwords, the kind of loose, improvisational stuff we'd heard stories about from our southern neighbors. Stories of high-speed operators who thrived on aggression and instinct, but sometimes at the cost of precision. I was skeptical, borderline dismissive. We'd operated alongside U.S. forces before, solid partners, no doubt, with unmatched resources and experience from years of intense deployments. But their style? It felt unstructured, risky. We Canadians had our own legacy. The 1st Special Force Unit in World War II, those Devil's Brigade commandos who fought alongside Americans with grit and ingenuity. We didn't need to reinvent the wheel. Our methods worked. Why fix what wasn't broken? My team felt the same. A few of us were selected to attend this course at one of their advanced training facilities, a mocked-up urban environment designed for close-quarters chaos. I figured it'd be useful for interoperability, maybe pick up a few tricks on gear or tech. At worst, a chance to observe and reinforce why our approach was superior. I packed light, mentally prepared to take notes and nod politely. I walked into that course convinced I was there mainly to watch and learn selectively. I was dead wrong. That arrogance, quiet, professional arrogance, was the first thing the training stripped away. What followed wasn't just a course, it was a confrontation with everything I thought I knew about fighting in cities. Urban warfare isn't a checklist or a doctrine, it's a living nightmare that punishes rigidity. And the Americans? They didn't teach us new techniques. They forced us to unlearn the old ones. This is my confession, how a group of proud Canadian operators got humbled, broken, and ultimately rebuilt. How we went from doubting their chaos to realizing it was the only way to survive the modern battlefield. And how it changed not just how we fight, but how we think. The training site wasn't a range. It was a sprawling, purpose-built urban hellscape. 3 square blocks of crumbling concrete buildings, narrow alleys choked with debris, shattered windows staring like empty eye sockets, and burned-out vehicles scattered across intersections. The air carried the sharp tang of smoke grenades, diesel fumes, and something chemical that clung to the back of your throat. Speakers hidden in the walls pumped out overlapping sounds, distant gunfire, screaming civilians, barking dogs, muezzin calls, car alarms, children crying. It wasn't background noise, it was an assault on your senses designed to overload you from the moment you crossed the threshold. Nothing about it felt familiar. Our Canadian training facilities are clean, controlled, predictable. Even our most advanced urban sites follow a logical layout, clear lanes, marked danger areas, safety officers in high-vis vests. Here, there were no neat boundaries. The city bled into itself. One block might be a residential neighborhood, the next a market turned war zone, then suddenly an industrial zone with rusted shipping containers stacked like barricades. You never knew what was around the next corner because the instructors changed it overnight. New rubble piles, fresh graffiti, different lighting, altered sight lines. The first morning, we kitted up expecting the usual, a detailed ops order, graphic control measures, rehearsed actions on objectives. Instead, the lead American instructor, a quiet, sun-beaten master sergeant with a salt and pepper beard and zero interest in ceremony, handed each team leader a single index card. On it was a vague mission statement: locate and extract a high-value individual believed to be in the eastern sector. Expect armed opposition and non-combatant presence. Time starts now. No grid references, no timeline, no phased objectives, no rules of engagement brief beyond the basics. Just go. My team exchanged glances. This was it? We'd planned multi-day operations with less ambiguity. I felt that first twinge of unease, but I pushed it down. Fine, we'd impose our own structure. We'd treat it like any other deliberate clear. Sector sketches, bounding teams, standard calls. We were professionals. We'd make it work. We moved in textbook fashion. 2 assault elements, security on the flanks, precise pieing of corners, crisp verbal commands over the radio. For the first 30 minutes, it almost felt normal. We flowed through a row of 2-story houses, clearing rooms with the efficiency we'd honed over years. Clear left, clear right, moving. Muscle memory took over. Then the environment started fighting back. A simulated IED detonated behind us, loud, disorienting, with a flash that temporarily whited out our NVGs even in daylight mode. Dust and debris rained down. Before we could reorient, role players dressed as civilians began pouring out of side alleys, shouting in a mix of English and Arabic, some carrying wounded children, others just running in panic. Our carefully spaced formation bunched up instinctively as we tried to control the crowd without escalating. That's when the opposing force hit us, small teams popping from upper windows and rooftops with simunition rounds that stung like hell even through plates. They didn't attack in predictable waves. They probed, withdrew, reappeared somewhere else. One moment we were pushing forward, the next we were taking fire from 3 directions with civilians still in the kill zone. Our comms discipline, usually our pride, started to crack. Voices overlapped. Contact left. Where left? 2nd floor, broken window. No, wait, rooftop. We tried to fall back on standard NATO battle drills, but the drills assumed space, assumed clear lanes of fire, assumed the enemy would play by the same rules. Here, nothing was clear. The city itself was the enemy. Every doorway a threat, every shadow a potential shooter, every civilian a possible variable that could get us killed or fail the mission. By the time the instructors called Index, we had failed spectacularly. The HVI had escaped. Half my team was marked as casualties. Civilians had been caught in the crossfire, and we hadn't even reached the eastern sector. We regrouped in stunned silence, waiting for the expected hot wash, the detailed critique we were used to. It never came. The instructors just nodded, jotted notes, and said, "Reset in 20, same mission." For the first time in my career, I felt truly off balance. Not tired, not frustrated. Lost. The methods that had carried me through real deployments suddenly felt brittle, like glass in a storm. That city wasn't a backdrop. It was alive, and it didn't care about our procedures.
The instructors never gave us a formal briefing on their philosophy. There were no PowerPoint slides, no laminated handouts, no neat acronyms to memorize. Instead, they showed us day after day by throwing us into scenarios that were deliberately rigged to expose cracks we didn't know existed. Their core idea wasn't about teaching us what to do. It was about forcing us to confront what happens when the textbook fails. They didn't hand out solutions. They engineered problems that had no clean answers. Wrong information, incomplete intel, conflicting priorities, shifting threats. They put us in situations where every choice carried real consequences: simulated casualties, mission failure, civilians killed because we hesitated or over-controlled. It was training by failure. They let us plan meticulously, execute with all the precision we were famous for, and then watch it unravel in real time. An Op 4 sniper would pick off a team member at the exact moment we committed to a breach. A friendly local informant would feed us bad intel that led us into an ambush. A sudden power outage in the mock city would kill our drones and night vision just as we entered a basement complex. And when it all went sideways, the instructors didn't jump in to save us. They didn't pause the exercise to correct our mistakes on the spot. They let it burn. That was the part that grated on us the most. Back home, after a bad lane, we'd get an immediate, detailed after-action review. Instructors would stop the clock, walk us through every error, show us the right way, and rerun the scenario until we nailed it. It built confidence through mastery. Here, the Americans did the opposite. They'd watch us die on the objective, call End X, and simply say, reset, same mission, go again. No long explanations, no hand-holding, just silence and another chance to feel the weight of our own limitations. One of the senior instructors, a grizzled chief warrant officer who'd done multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, put it bluntly during a rare moment of conversation over coffee. "We don't fix your mistakes for you. We let you feel them in your bones. 'Cause in a real city, nobody's going to pause the fight to give you a safety brief." They weren't trying to humiliate us. They weren't proving Canadian methods were inferior. They were dismantling the illusion that any method, ours, theirs, anyone's, could survive contact with a truly chaotic urban battlefield unchanged. I remember one evening, after we'd been shredded for the third time in a row on the same block, one of my sergeants lost it. He cornered an American instructor and demanded, "Why aren't you teaching us anything? You just watch us fail and send us back in." The instructor looked at him for a long second, then asked, "What did you learn today?" My sergeant started listing mistakes: comms overload, poor spacing, slow reaction to contact. The instructor nodded. "Exactly. You learned more in 3 failures than I could teach you in 3 hours of lecture. Now go apply it." That was the method. Break the ego, break the reliance on doctrine, break the need for perfection, then let the operator rebuild something more resilient from the pieces. It offended every professional instinct we had. We were used to being corrected, guided, refined. This felt like abandonment, like they didn't respect us enough to invest in proper instruction. But slowly, painfully, I started to see the design behind it. They weren't withholding knowledge. They were stripping away the crutches: clear orders, predictable enemies, controlled environments, so that whatever emerged on the other side would be ours, not borrowed, not memorized, earned. They didn't lower us. They let us slam face first into our own boundaries over and over until we finally admitted those boundaries existed. And once we admitted that, only then could we start pushing past them.
Day 4. They gave us what looked like a straightforward task: clear a 3-story apartment block, gain control of the roof for overwatch, and hold it while a follow-on element moved through the sector. Classic, deliberate clear. Exactly the kind of mission we'd run 100 times back home, room by room, floor by floor, with stacked teams, grenades on entry, and methodical consolidation. We briefed it perfectly: primary and alternate breach points, limit of exploitation, actions on rooftop contact, casualty collection points. Everything by the book. We crossed the line of departure feeling sharp. Comms check good, weapons tight, spacing disciplined. The first 2 rooms went clean. Flashbangs, dynamic entry, dominate the space, call it clear. Momentum was ours. Then the city started chewing. We hit the stairwell to 2nd floor and the lights cut out. Total blackout, no warning. NVGs flipped down, but the instructors had flooded the building with IR illuminators that washed out our tubes. Everything turned into a grainy green mess. We slowed, cautious now, pieing every corner like doctrine demanded. That hesitation was all the Op 4 needed.
A burst of sim rounds ripped from a hallway we'd already talled clear. Someone had looped back behind us through a connecting apartment we hadn't known existed. My point man took 3 to the plate carrier and went down dead. Comm exploded. Overlapping calls, guys shouting for status, trying to regain initiative with standard immediate action drills. But the building wouldn't let us reset. Role-player civilians started screaming from upper floors, women, kids, an old man waving a white cloth, running down the stairs right into our stack. We had to physically control them, separate potential threats, all while taking sporadic fire from above. My radio filled with traffic, suppressing second floor, negative, civilians in the open, who has eyes on the roof? We pushed anyway, determined to stick to the plan, breach the second floor hallway, flow into the apartments, clear systematically. But every room seemed to connect to 2 others through shot-out walls or hidden doors. The neat linear progression we expected turned into a maze. Bounding Overwatch broke down. Teams got separated by collapsing drywall and furniture barricades. By the time we fought our way to the 3rd floor, the rhythm was gone. We were loud, slow, and predictable. Op 4 had set up in the rooftop stairwell shack with a belt-fed sim machine gun. They hosed us the moment we cracked the door. 4 more casualties, including me, headshot the second I pied the fatal funnel. Mission clock ran out with us pinned on the 3rd floor landing, roof uncontrolled, follow-on element exposed in the street below and wiped out. Total failure. Again. We exfiled in silence, weapons low, dragging our dead. I waited for the blow-up, the harsh critique, the pointed questions, the "what the hell were you thinking" that we'd have gotten in any Canadian lane walk. It never came. The instructors stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching us regroup. No yelling, no sarcasm, just quiet observation while we caught our breath and reloaded mags. One of them finally walked over, looked at the casualty tags hanging off half the team, and said only, "Reset in 15, same building." That was it. We sat there on the curb, covered in dust and sweat, staring at each other. Nobody spoke for a long minute. Then one of my younger operators, a guy who'd always been rock solid, muttered, "That was bullshit." A couple of heads nodded. I didn't disagree out loud, but inside I was raging. How were we supposed to improve if they wouldn't tell us what we did wrong? But the silence from the instructors hit harder than any ass-chewing. It left us alone with the failure. No external blame to hide behind, no quick fix offered, just the raw truth. We had been outfought in a building by a handful of role players using the environment better than we did. My pride, our collective pride, took a direct hit. We weren't angry at the Americans anymore. We were ashamed. Quietly, deeply ashamed. Because for the first time, it wasn't bad luck or unfair scenario design. It was us. Our perfect plan, our disciplined execution, our trusted methods, they hadn't been enough. We lost that day not to the enemy. We lost to our own inability to adapt when the city refused to cooperate. And nobody needed to tell us. We felt it.
By the end of the first week, the cracks in our team were impossible to ignore. We weren't just failing missions anymore, we were starting to fail each other. Evenings in the barracks turned tense. What started as casual debriefs over coffee became heated arguments. One of my sergeants, solid guy, multiple tours, one of the best shooters I've ever led, insisted we double down on our methods. "We're getting screwed by bad scenarios," he said. "If we execute tighter, communicate better, rehearse more, we'll force the plan through." A couple of others agreed. They wanted to prove the Canadian way could prevail through sheer discipline. Another group, quieter but growing, started questioning everything. "Maybe the scenarios aren't unfair," one of the younger operators said. "Maybe the city is supposed to feel like this, and maybe we're the ones who don't fit." I stayed neutral at first, trying to keep the team cohesive, but inside I was torn. Part of me sided with the old guard. Our doctrine had kept us alive in real fights. The other part, the part I didn't want to admit existed, was starting to wonder if we were clinging to a security blanket. The breaking point came on a night insertion into a multi-block commercial district. The mission, locate and neutralize an OPOF command node believed to be operating out of a cluster of shops and offices. Intel was deliberately vague, only a rough sector and some outdated photos. We planned it the way we always did. Detailed contingencies, assigned sectors, strict noise and light discipline. We moved well at first. Silent infiltration, good use of shadows, drone overwatch from one of our guys. We identified the target building and began stacking on a side entrance. Then I made the call that almost ended it all for us. A civilian role player, an older woman carrying groceries, emerged from a connecting alley right into our stack. She froze, started babbling in broken English, clearly terrified. Doctrine was clear. Control the civilian, flex cuff if necessary, move her to a secure area, continue the mission. Speed, surprise, violence of action. But something felt off. The alley she came from was one we hadn't fully cleared. My gut said threat. I made the decision. Bypass her, push her aside gently, breach immediately before we lost surprise. I was wrong. The moment we committed to the door, the woman screamed, a prearranged signal. OPOF poured out of the alley behind us and from second-story windows across the street. It was a textbook L-shaped ambush. Sim rounds cracked everywhere. In seconds, 3 of my guys were down, including my breacher and my best assaulter. I took one to the neck, immediate kill. The rest of the team scattered into defensive positions, but the momentum was gone. We fought hard, managed to extract under fire, but the command node activated a simulated IED that destroyed the entire block. Mission failure. Heavy simulated casualties, and worst of all, the civilian we'd pushed past, she'd been unarmed, innocent. Our rush had turned her into bait we couldn't protect. Back at the rally point, the silence was suffocating. Nobody looked at me, not with anger, worse, with doubt. Later, alone in the wash-up tent, I replayed it. That single decision, prioritizing tempo over uncertainty, had cost us everything. But if I'd stopped to fully control the civilian, search the alley, confirm no threat, we'd have lost surprise and probably walked into the same ambush anyway. There was no right answer, only less wrong ones. That's when it hit me like a gut punch. It wasn't lack of skill, it wasn't poor execution, it was mindset. I'd been trying to force the environment to conform to my plan instead of adapting to what it was throwing at us. I walked back to the team and said the words I never thought I'd say. We're not good enough. Not yet. The way we've been thinking, it's not working here. And if this was real, some of us wouldn't be going home. Nobody argued. For the first time, the room felt united, not in pride, but in shared humility. My ego didn't save us that night. Admitting its limits did. That was the moment the real training began.
After the breaking point, something shifted. We stopped fighting the training and started listening to it. The city wasn't a static range with targets and lanes. It was a living organism. Walls breathed as they crumbled under fire. Alleys shifted with new debris overnight. Civilians moved like blood cells through arteries, sometimes carrying infection. Enemy, friend, bystander, they blurred and swapped places without warning. There were no clean lines, no absolute right answers, only gradients of risk and consequence. The Americans never sat us down for a lecture on their philosophy. They didn't need to. We started absorbing it through repetition, through the bruises and the failures that finally began to decrease. The core ideas were simple, almost brutal in their pragmatism. Decide and act with 70% of the information, because waiting for 90% gets you killed. Tempo beats perfection every time. A good plan executed violently right now is better than a perfect plan next week or even in 5 minutes. Embrace controlled chaos. The battlefield won't give you order, so build your own inside the storm. They taught us to read the city like a predator reads terrain, not as a map, but as flow. Where do people naturally move when shots ring out? Which rubble pile offers concealment to us and exposure to them? How does sound bounce in a concrete canyon to mask our movement or reveal theirs? The hardest pill for us to swallow was letting go of beautiful. Back home, we took pride in elegant executions, silent infiltrations, synchronized breaches that looked good on helmet cam footage. Clean, precise, professional. We wanted our fights to look like they belonged in a recruiting video. Here, the Americans showed us that survival in a real city is ugly. It's loud when it needs to be quiet, slow when you want to sprint, aggressive when caution feels safer. It's accepting that your muzzle flash will give away your position, that your suppressed weapon isn't silent in a hallway with echoing tile, that sometimes you have to kick a door so hard the frame splinters because subtlety just lost you the initiative. It's getting dirty, literally and figuratively, crawling through sewage to flank, using a dead enemy's body as cover, making calls that feel wrong but keep your team breathing. One scenario drove this home. We were tasked with extracting a downed pilot from a densely populated block crawling with OPFOR. Intel said civilians were hostile to uniforms based on real patterns from certain theaters. As we approached the crash site, a crowd of role players formed, shouting, throwing bottles, blocking streets. Our instinct: disperse them firmly, maintain control, secure a perimeter. We tried. It turned into a riot. OPFOR used the chaos to close in. We lost half the team before we even reached the pilot. Next iteration, we tried something different. We ditched the obvious route. One element stripped outer kit to blend, helmets off, plates hidden under local clothing, moving us small teams through back alleys while the main force created a diversion 2 blocks away. We accepted the risk. If spotted, we'd be isolated and outgunned. But we gained speed and surprise. We got the pilot out. It wasn't pretty. Comms were messy. One guy had to fight hand-to-hand in a market stall. We left gear behind, but we succeeded where perfection had failed. That day, I finally understood. The city doesn't reward the most disciplined or the best drilled. It rewards the ones who can think like it does. Unpredictable, opportunistic, unforgiving. We Canadians had always valued being the steady ones, the reliable allies who showed up prepared and executed flawlessly. Now we were learning that reliability in urban fight isn't about never making mistakes. It's about recovering from them faster than the enemy can exploit them. Letting go of clean felt like betrayal at first. Then it felt like freedom. We weren't becoming reckless. We were becoming resilient.
About 10 days in, we ran the apartment block mission again, the same 3-story building that had humiliated us on day 4. This time, something felt different even before we crossed the threshold. We didn't spend hours on a detailed rehearsal. The planning session was short. Rough sectors, key principles, tempo, initiative, mutual trust, and a shared understanding that the plan would survive exactly until first contact. Then it was on us to adapt. No more rigid calls for every movement. We shifted to shorter, contextual comms, pushing left hall, got your back, eyes on civvies upper. Less chatter, more listening. We trusted each operator to read the space and make calls without waiting for my voice on the net. We entered uglier than before. No perfect stack, just a loose flow, weapons up, using irregular offsets to cover blind spots the building threw at us. When the lights cut out again, we knew they would. We didn't freeze. NVGs washed out? Fine. We transitioned to white light faster, accepted the giveaway, and used the glare to blind potential shooters on the stairs. Civilians flooded the stairwell mid-clear. Instead of trying to control every one, which had bogged us down last time, we redirected the flow with loud, simple commands in the local language phrases we'd picked up, letting most pass while isolating only the ones lingering too close. It felt chaotic, almost reckless, but it kept our momentum. OPFOR probed the same way, flanking through connecting rooms, popping from upper windows. This time, we didn't try to fight a linear battle. When a team got pinned in a hallway, the flanking element didn't wait for orders. They punched through a drywall partition into the adjacent apartment and rolled up the threat from the side. It wasn't in any playbook. It was just the read of the moment. We still took hits. 2 guys went down on the second floor. One from a mouse hole we missed, another from a flashbang that bounced wrong. But the team didn't fracture. The remaining operators adjusted on the fly. One shifted to cover the casualty. Another grabbed the downed man's sector without being told. We consolidated faster, pushed harder to the roof. The machine gun nest on the stairwell shack was still waiting, but we didn't stack on the door like before.
One element suppressed from the third-floor hallway while two guys bounded up an exterior fire escape we'd spotted on the approach. Risky, exposed, but it gave us an angle the Op-4 hadn't covered. We dropped grenades through the shack's skylight and rolled in from two directions at once. Roof secured, building held, follow-on element moved through unmolested. It wasn't flawless. We had casualties. Comms got heated once or twice. We left holes in security that a smarter enemy could have exploited. Helmet cam footage would have looked sloppy, uneven spacing, improvised routes, shouted commands instead of whispers. But we won, decisively. When the instructors called End X, we X-filed expecting the usual silence. Instead, the lead instructor walked up, looked over the team, and gave a small nod. "Better," he said. Just that. No praise, no breakdown. But coming from him, it felt like a medal. Back at the rally point, my guys were quiet again, but a different kind of quiet. Tired, bruised, but alive with energy. One of the younger operators looked at me and grinned. "We actually breathed together in there, sir." He was right. For the first time, the team wasn't executing a script. We were reacting as a single organism, reading the same cues, trusting the same instincts, moving with the city instead of against it. The retries after that followed the same pattern, still messy, still costly at times, but never brittle. We stopped shattering when the plan broke. We bent, adjusted, surged. We weren't perfect. We were effective. And in an urban fight, that's the only standard that matters.
Urban warfare doesn't just test your body or your tactics. It reaches inside your head and squeezes. The mock city had a way of shrinking the world. Once you were inside those concrete corridors, the sky disappeared. Hallways narrowed until your shoulders almost brushed both walls. Ceilings felt lower with every floor you climbed. Sound warped. Your own footsteps echoed like a giant's, while distant gunfire arrived muffled and directionless. Time stretched. A 2-minute push through a building could feel like 20. Every doorway became a potential ending. The Americans didn't shield us from any of it. Where our training back home managed stress, short exposures, safety briefs, mandatory resets, they leaned into it. Scenarios ran long, sometimes hours without relief. Casualties stayed dead, forcing the survivors to carry the weight. Op-4 didn't just shoot, they taunted over loudspeakers, played recordings of crying children, released dogs that barked inches from your face. They wanted the pressure to build until it found the cracks in your psyche. One night scenario hit harder than most. We were inserted by helicopter onto a rooftop at 0200, tasked with clearing down through a 7-story residential tower to extract an HVI in the basement. The building was pitch black, power deliberately cut. Generators hummed somewhere, adding a low vibration you felt in your chest. Smells hid in layers. Cordite from earlier lanes, rotting garbage in the stairwells, something metallic that could have been blood. We flowed down floor by floor, quieter than we'd ever moved. But the city fought back psychologically. Every apartment we breached had role players, families huddled in corners, some compliant, some defiant, a few openly hostile. One room had a mother clutching a child mannequin, sobbing uncontrollably as we searched. Another had an old man who refused to move, forcing us to physically drag him out of the line of fire when Op-4 opened up. By the 4th floor, the stress was physical. Hearts pounding so hard you could hear it in your ears. Hands slick inside gloves. Breathing shallow to stay quiet, but the lack of oxygen made decisions fuzzy. Then came the ambush in a narrow interior courtyard. Op-4 had turned it into a kill zone with overlapping fields of fire from balconies. Muzzle flashes strobed like lightning. Sim rounds snapped past heads. 2 of my guys went down immediately. I dove for cover behind a rusted car, returning fire, but the echoes made it impossible to locate threats accurately. That's when the fear really clamped down. Not the adrenaline rush of contact, the deeper kind. The kind that whispers you're trapped, that there's no way out, that the next corner is the one that ends you. Time slowed to a crawl. Every movement felt exposed. I remember thinking clear as day, I don't want to die in this fucking stairwell. We fought out of it,
Barely. Extracted the HVI, exfiled with half the team dead or wounded. But when we hit daylight again, legs were shaking. A couple of guys threw up behind the rally point. Nobody joked, nobody bragged. Later, one of the American instructors pulled me aside. I expected a critique on tactics. Instead, he asked, "How'd that feel on 5?" I knew what he meant, the fear. I told him the truth, like I was drowning in concrete. He nodded. "Good. Now you know what it actually feels like. Most guys never get that until it's real. We give it to you here so you can learn to operate with it, not without it." That was their approach to the mental side. Don't manage the fear away. Don't pretend it won't be there. Train alongside it. Make decisions while your pulse is redlining. Communicate when your voice wants to crack. Lead when part of you just wants to hide. They taught us small tools, controlled breathing between contacts, verbal anchors, "I'm still moving, I'm still fighting." Physical cues, tapping a teammate's shoulder to ground yourself in the team instead of the chaos. But mostly, they taught us acceptance. Fear isn't failure, freezing is. As long as you keep thinking, keep moving, keep choosing, the fear can ride along. It doesn't get the wheel. When we left that course, I wasn't fearless. I was something better, familiar with my own breaking points. And I knew how to function on the far side of them. In a city that wants to crush your spirit, that's the only armor that really matters.
When the course finally wrapped, we stood in a loose semicircle on the edge of the mock city, gears stripped, faces still carrying the grime of the last scenario. The American instructors shook hands, offered quiet good work nods, and that was it. No graduation ceremony, no certificates, no speeches. Just the knowledge that we'd earned something intangible but permanent. I've had time to reflect since then, back home, running lanes with new operators, incorporating pieces of what we learned into our own program. Some things about us, about Canadian Special Operations, never changed, and I wouldn't want them to. We're still disciplined. We still demand precision where it matters, weapons handling, medical skills, planning at the strategic and operational levels. We still move with a quiet professionalism that allies respect and enemies underestimate. Our core values, integrity, courage, loyalty, respect for civilians, remain non-negotiable. We didn't come home as cowboys. We came home better. But other things shifted forever, deep in the bone. I no longer look at urban warfare the same way. I used to see it as a problem set that could be solved with better rehearsals, tighter procedures, superior individual skill. Now I see it as an environment that will always resist control. The city is an opponent with infinite moves, and the only way to win is to become more adaptable than it is destructive. I've changed how I train the next generation. We still teach the fundamentals, because without a strong base, chaos eats you alive. But we deliberately inject ambiguity earlier, fail them sooner, force them to recover without hand-holding. I tell them straight, perfection is a luxury we can't afford in a real city. Speed, initiative, and trust in your teammates, those are what bring you home. Most of all, I've learned to live with uncertainty. I used to crave the comfort of a solid plan, clear intelligence, predictable outcomes. Now I accept that most information will be incomplete, most plans will fracture on contact, and most fights will feel unfair. And that's okay. Strength isn't pretending otherwise. Strength is moving forward anyway. I'm still proud of where I come from, proud of the legacy of Canadian Special Forces, professionals who show up prepared, who fight with restraint when others lose it, who put mission and teammates above ego. But I'm more humble now. I know there are limits to any doctrine, including ours. I know that real growth starts the moment you admit you don't have all the answers. That course didn't make us Americans. It made us better Canadians, operators who carry our traditions forward while carrying new lessons alongside them. We kept our soul, we just widened our mind.
And in this business, that's the difference between surviving the city and mastering it.
The day we loaded onto the bus to leave the training site, I took one last look at the mock city. It stood there under the morning sun, scarred concrete, tangled rebar, faded graffiti, like it hadn't changed at all. But we had. The Americans never taught us how to fight in a city. They taught us how to think when the city fights back. That's the real confession. We arrived believing our way was complete, disciplined, precise, proven. We left knowing that no method is ever complete, not ours, not theirs, not anyone's. The urban battlefield is too alive, too unforgiving for any doctrine to claim mastery. The best you can do is build operators who can adapt faster than the environment can break them. Admitting your limits isn't weakness, it's the first step to surviving. Changing your mindset isn't betrayal of tradition, it's the only way to keep your people alive long enough to come home and pass that tradition on. Humility isn't the opposite of professionalism, it's the foundation of true elite performance. I'm grateful for every failure they forced on us, every silent reset, every moment we slammed into our own boundaries, because those moments stripped away the illusion that control is possible in a modern city fight. What's left when the illusion is gone is clarity. Trust your training, trust your team, trust your ability to decide under pressure, and then move. The course didn't make me stronger in the way I once measured strength. My marksmanship didn't magically improve. I didn't get faster or tougher overnight. But I got smarter. I learned to see options where I once saw only procedures, to accept chaos instead of fighting it, to lead by empowering initiative instead of enforcing compliance. And in the urban battlefield, where a single wrong read can end everything, where hesitation costs lives, where the environment itself is trying to kill you, that kind of smart is what decides who gets to go home. So this is my final confession, not just for myself, but for every Canadian operator who walked through that course with me. We thought we were coming to observe. We left transformed. Not because we abandoned who we are, but because we finally understood what it takes to stay alive in the cities of tomorrow. And for that lesson, hard-earned, humbling, and ultimately life-saving, we owe our American partners a debt we can never fully repay. The day I stepped off that bus back in Canada, I wasn't a stronger shooter. I was a wiser leader. And in the end, that's what brings your team back alive.